We're going to now turn to Nona Chai of the Just Transition Alliance, who's going to talk about just transition developments here.
I am Nona Chai from the Just Transition Alliance and the global campaign to demand climate justice. I want to declare that I have no direct ties to the fossil fuel industry or other emissions-intensive industries and no conflicts of interest. Just transition matters for workers, indigenous peoples, and affected communities because the world is at a crossroads. We can continue with business as usual and create our own destruction, or we can co-create a society where those most harmed lead on decisions that impact them, where indigenous traditional practices, clean, safe workplaces, and local regenerative economies provide and thrive. We need to stop the real and physical violence against indigenous peoples and affected communities. We need a just transition that cares for all. When the UAE Just Transition Work Program was first established, we were among the many who saw its broad scope agreed to by parties as a promising development. A just transition cannot be possible without recognizing the different dimensions and challenges faced by workers, indigenous peoples, and communities in the transition away from fossil fuels, especially in developing countries. This includes poverty eradication, sustainable development, adapting to the impacts of climate change, and protecting and empowering all vulnerable and affected workers, indigenous peoples, communities, and sectors. The scope of the UAE JTWP was not only broad enough to address these issues, but also laid the foundations for developing concrete outcomes and actions for people on the ground. However, since its establishment, the JTWP has yet to deliver on its promise. It has become bogged down in endless debate, grandstanding, and poor facilitation. DCJ believes that this is a make or break year for just transition in the UNFCCC. Another COP without actionable decisions on just transition will render the JTWP into a permanent talk shop not worth renewing after it expires in 2026. Either the JTWP fulfills its promise or it becomes another failed work stream obstructing the international response to climate crisis. We strongly welcome the G77 adoption of the proposal to establish a just transition mechanism, very similar to civil society's proposal for a BLM action mechanism that aims to achieve a holistic just transition across the whole economy within and between countries. The G77's mechanism proposal incorporates many of the functions of the BAM that we, including DCJ, have been arguing for. Coordination of just transition initiatives within and outside the UNFCCC, supporting action and provision of technical assistance and MOI for implementing just transitions, especially in the Global South, and knowledge sharing and creation. This mechanism can serve as a space to initiate action on all dimensions of just transition, including energy transition, critical minerals, food and agricultural systems, care work, and others. But where is the Global North's ambition for establishing necessary institutional arrangements? The Global North is failing to support a new institutional mechanism for fear of overlap and administrative costs. The world needs the Global North to step up and fund a non-debt creating just transition in order to break historical patterns of harm. Because of climate change, costs for states and billions of displaced and affected workers, indigenous peoples, communities will continue to rise. We are witnessing this with the increasing frequency and intensity of natural disasters, including in Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, Alaska, Egypt, and the Philippines, and more. We cannot allow more lives, livelihoods, and species to be lost. The Global North claims that a mechanism already exists and that just transition is in everything. However, the popularization of just transition does not ensure its success, and mainstreaming just transition across all UNFCCC mechanisms does not preclude parties from creating a dedicated home for just transition. We need a powerful and inclusive institutional center to create focus, clarify definitions, and distribute resources for just transition. Most importantly, this mechanism must create the conditions for a principled and just transition away from extractive economies and a fossil fuel phase-out. We urge all parties to ensure that the mechanism is both guided by principles that protect and promote the rights of all sectors and includes the formal representation of observer constituencies in the UNFCCC and civil society. There can be no just transition without the leadership and agency of workers, indigenous peoples, communities, youth, and all affected sectors. Furthermore, DCJ is calling for the removal of language on nature-based solutions in the current informal note of the JTWP that will be the basis of a COP decision. NBS is often used as an umbrella term covering a range of schemes for climate and biodiversity protection. The concept is so vague that it has also referred to various false solutions that violate the rights and territories of indigenous peoples and communities, as well as destroying ecosystems. As our colleagues and friends of the earth have said, NBS is a wolf in sheep's clothing, a dangerous idea in disguise. Just transition decisions must enshrine the collective rights of indigenous peoples, which include but are not limited to UNDRIP and ILO Convention 169. DCJ joins the growing chorus of movements rejecting all false climate solutions. There can be no just transition with false solutions. Just transition can only be with real solutions such as agroecology and locally governed food systems. A just transition must recognize and ensure the implementation of the rights of peasants and other people working in rural areas as recognized in the United Nations Declaration, UNDROP. We have the solutions. Let's follow paths laid by principles of environmental justice, the Hermes principles for democratic organizing, the Bali principles of climate justice, and the indigenous principles of just transition, well-established documents within the environmental justice movement. Let's co-create a future where everyone can thrive. Thank you.